Hi, good evening, everyone. Colleen Ronco, Manalapan Road. To the question that was just asked, the humane law enforcement officer doesn't receive a stipend. It's in the state mandate that every town has to have a humane law enforcement officer as of February 1st, 2019. And it's not a full-time job. It's just in case there's an animal control call that requires an officer to come out because of abuse. So I think last month we appointed one officer. I don't know if this is in addition to that one or if something came up that he can't do it and now Officer Drew is doing it.
Last month we did appoint Nick.
Right, Officer Nemus. Correct.
Yes.
Correct. So I think it's just, there's no stipend involved, it's just mandated by the state of New Jersey as of February of 2019. If anybody needs to, I can get the statute for them. The other question I have is that, was there anybody here on council in 2013? No?
I was not.
No?
Me neither.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. So with respect to this ordinance with the $2 million that's going into the George Street pumping station, last month I had asked and I was told that it was going to be $1.2 million and that it was going to be $380,000 for the property on Main Street. So now we're up to $2 million in bond on the George Street pumping station. I had also asked if, in fact, we had received FEMA money for that particular pumping station, and I was told that yes, we received $400,000, but that it was diverted down to Daniel Road.
Excuse me a second.
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What was the $1 million? I just want to make sure I heard.
It was $1.2 million when I asked last month,
1.2 million.
or 2 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you.
So I was told that the $400 million from FEMA was diverted down to
$400,000.
$400,000 was diverted down to Daniel Street to make repairs to that pumping station. So my issue here now is that was anybody on council made aware of the fact that in 2013, the council at that time decided that they weren't going to redo the George Street pumping station, that the $400,000 was going to be diverted down to Daniel Road so that they could fix that to produce more water? Was anybody here told about that?
No.
Okay, so from the 2013 audit that was done, it says, Borough Council has tentatively decided that the George Street water treatment plant will not be restored. The plant was destroyed during Hurricane Irene in 2011. The borough is exploring the feasibility of transferring their NJDEP water allocation from George Street to Daniel Road and expanding the Daniel Road water treatment plant to accommodate increased production. So obviously we did that if we took the $400,000 and diverted it down to Daniel. So my concern is, number one, is that why didn't Mayor Sealy inform anybody here that the intent was never to restore the George Street plant? And why are we now restoring the plant when we had the money back then and diverted it? And why isn't that pumping station on Daniel putting out what we thought it was going to put out with respect to water?
So I can't speak for past. I'm kind of just thinking that at the time it was to get one plant up and running at 100% or whatever percentage. Mayor, if I'm wrong, please correct me and I'll let you.
You could be wrong.
Okay.
You could be wrong. In order to divert money from any FEMA grant, okay, it has to get FEMA approval first. You can't just take money and say, hey, I'm going to spend it on whatever I want. Okay? I have somebody checking into right now the exact figures and where all that money went. Because I want to know where it all went, because I don't know that all 400,000 went to Daniel Street. I do think a portion did, but I think some of it else went to a water project as well. But before we could do it, we had to get FEMA approval to do it. To answer your question briefly about not doing the plan at that time, of course, as you well know, it's 5 council members to make a decision.
Sure.
The council, along with the mayor at that time, decided it would not be in the best interest of the borough to redo that water plant at that time because the cost was quite extensive, as I remember, because at that time we weren't looking at a temporary pumping station, in other words, a portable unit. We were looking at totally redoing the entire building. The other thing is part of that money from FEMA could have been used for the remediation to clean that building. That's why I want to make sure I have all the exact figures for you. I will have the exact amount and each breakdown of where that money went.
Okay, so since this is on first reading and we're not even sure what the situation is with respect to that FEMA money and this pumping station, I mean, this audit said that they tentatively was going to move the money and that they had no intentions of redoing that pumping station. Maybe we need to shelve this until we find out exactly what's going on. Last month it was 1.2, now it's over $2 million. We've got a council back in 2013 and a mayor that decided we weren't going to restore that pumping station, and now all these years later we're restoring it when we diverted that FEMA money to something else. And why isn't Daniel Road producing what we thought it was going to produce based on that diversion? So I'm just a little concerned
I can
that...
answer the Daniel Road one.
Excuse me?
I can answer the Daniel Road one.
Okay.
the Downey Road, the New Jersey DEP wouldn't allow us to increase the pumping capacity.
So then why did we move the money down there?
We moved the money down and refurbished the plant because it was an older plant with the chlorine type filtering system that could take out radionuclides. And if you have one grandfathered, you can keep that radionuclides, obviously, it says what it is in water. We're probably only one of the towns around that has a plant that could break that down. And that's why the money was set there, because that was our only working water plant. Like I said before, I don't know that all was set there, but I do know a portion definitely was. But I do know the New Jersey DEP did tell us no, because we tried to extend our water. In fact, we tried that with George Street as well, because we're trying to get away from purchasing our water from East Brunswick.
But is it going to be any kind of a tax savings to us in the process? Because it seems like we're bonding an awful lot of money, which is going to be on our backs. And honestly, my water bill is $177 a quarter, so I can't see it being a major decrease to supplement what I'm going to be increased in taxes.
I can tell you that my water bill's higher, and I hear what you're saying, absolutely. Can I tell you it's going to lower your taxes? Eventually. It ain't going to happen overnight, but
Yeah,
yes.
20 years from now.
Once we become, well, you know, the idea of government is to think 20 years ahead, not just to think
Then
next
maybe we
year.
should have thought ahead in 2013
Exactly.
with the water
Maybe we should
treatment
have thought
plant.
ahead back in 1990. I mean, I can't answer for everything.
No, I understand that,
That's
but
why
my,
we're going through the expenses we're going through now, that I'm probably the first mayor ever to spend as much money as I have been trying to recoup it. But like I said before, we came in at a zero tax increase this year. Our tax increase is due to capital improvements. And
yeah,
while,
but again, Mayor, the zero increase this year has no significance on what we're bonding out and how much we're going to be paying in the future. I mean, again, if my water bill is going to go down to $10 and I'm only going to be increased $5 a month in my taxes, then great. But I can't see where there's going to be a significant decrease in my water bill that's going to accumulate and make better for my taxes.
well, then I would say that by next meeting would be a good idea for me to have for you, how much is $2 million going to affect your taxes
Over 20 years,
over the next couple of years, so you know
Okay.
what your increase is going to be right away.
I can do an amortization schedule on that and figure it out. But I mean, again, I think before we go bonding $2 million, there's some questions here that need to be answered before we agree to this first reading and before the council agrees here. And I think it's kind of bizarre that you, who was on council at that time, didn't bother to involve these 5 people in the fact that we weren't going to ever redo the George Street Station
Well, it
plan.
was never my intention to ever do it. I've been the
Okay, but you're not the only person here. Your
Exactly.
intention has nothing to do with anything. It has to do with these 5 people and these people behind you who voted you in. So ultimately, you knew, as one of the people that was on council at that time, that there was a diversion of the money and that they had no intentions of redoing George Street, yet you didn't let these 5 people know that that was the intention at the time. So they're thinking that they're going to vote this in when they weren't given all the facts.
So, Colleen,
Everybody up there knows there's no $400,000.
We're not talking about the $400,000. You're missing the point. The point is that it was decided by a town council in 2013 and the mayor at that time, and you were sitting on the town council, so you're aware of it, that they weren't going to redo the George Street plan, that we were going to divert the money. So now, all these years later, when nobody is on council anymore except you as the mayor, now we've decided to redo it, and these 5 people weren't informed.
So Colleen, I'm just speaking since I come on. And at the time, the mayor said they would vote not to redo it. But looking forward now, when we were asked to do it, I feel, and I believe the rest of the council, I don't want to put words in their mouth, that now, and I understand the numbers are in question, but we feel that it's important to get it done now, to have that second plan up and running. Regardless of what was voted on in the past, it's a different council.
Okay, but my
So-
concern is that maybe we need to do some kind of an analysis of what the actual tax savings is going to be, if there's going to be any, and what our taxes are going to increase. Because if you're telling me I'm only going to save $25 a quarter on my water bill, but my taxes are going to go up $1,000 a year over the course of however many years, then it's not a savings. And it makes absolutely no sense to go put $2 million in bonding to a water plant that isn't going to save anybody anything. And 20 years from now, when you pay it off, are you going to decrease my taxes by that amount? Of course not. So we're just going to be paying for this the rest of our lives. I mean, that's ultimately what the financial figures say. That's why I'm saying I think we need to reassess whether or not we really need to reopen that based on the amount of money that we're paying for a water bill and how much money we're going to be saving versus how much we're going to be paying in taxes.
Right, well, and like the mayor had said, we're trying to redo this also, Colleen, so we can get away from purchasing from East Brunswick. So,
But again, is it really going to be a cost saving to the taxpayers? Has anybody actually done any of those numbers to figure out whether or not this is going to be? Because there's no point I mean, I understand buying water from East Brunswick, but if buying water from East Brunswick is in the long term going to be cheaper than bonding out all this money and everybody's taxes increasing, I mean, let's face it, we've got one of the highest tax brackets around. I mean, and now we're going to increase it more, and whether or not taxes were raised 0% this year means nothing if next year it's going to be raised 5%, and the year after it's going to be raised 5%, and the year after it's going to be raised 5% to be able to pay for this bond. So I think we need to look at the numbers before anybody starts voting on this to make sure that it's actually in the best interest of the taxpayers. Not in the best interest of the town, but in the best interest of the taxpayers.
Because taxpayers are the town.
Cheryl Bass, Main Street, on the discussion of water. As I had promised the town council, I would go to the East Brunswick town council meeting about the Summer Hill Road, Old Stage Road item. Yes, I had gone to the East Brunswick town council meeting. And one of the items they were discussing is water and modernizing all of the water items and increasing the price of their water. So I would be in favor of opening up the plant so that we don't have to rely on East Brunswick water, and that knowing that they'll be raising their prices as time goes on, I think it's in the long run, a savings, but I don't know all the accounting on it. But they had at that town council meeting very recently about water, about modernizing, improving, bringing up their facilities and their infrastructure, and raising the price of water.
Jackie Palmer, Shipman Street. For Resolution 2019-122, can you please tell me what the project improvements to Adirondack Avenue will include?
That's
Yeah, I can.
First can answer, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Jackie. We got a DOT grant to do this. I don't remember the number, but I'll say $575,000. I'm not sure the exact number. I would have had it if I thought the question would come up. But it will be to put in curbs and widen the pavement to the same width that the lower section is from where the curbs currently stop up to Burlington Avenue.
From,
I think New York, I think it stops in New York, but the curbs and up to Burlington. I just don't remember the lower limit at the moment, but I'm pretty sure it's New York and up to Burlington. No sidewalks, just curbs and pavement work and drainage work.
okay. Okay. Thanks.